In the age of screens and notifications, texting has become one of the main forms of communication between lovers. It is fast, convenient, and seems to be present in every moment. But this very convenience carries with it a series of misunderstandings. A message not replied to in time can turn into a sign of indifference. A period, instead of an emoji, can be interpreted as coldness. When love passes through a screen, expectations and anxieties often become more complicated than the actual emotions of human beings. So the question is, how can messages, which are only short strings of words, not become the reason for love to erode? And today, we will analyze and explore the mysteries surrounding this topic. 1. Why is texting so important? You may ask yourself, why can such a simple action as sending a message create so much trouble? Because texting is not only communication, it is also a psychological test. Women often read more than what is actually written. A short line of text can become a suggestion for an entire landscape of emotion. When she writes, "What are you doing?" what she really wants to know is not just your activity, but also, are you thinking about me? Texting is important because it replaces the nonverbal signals in real life. Eye contact, voice, gestures. Without those elements, every word becomes heavier. A cold "yeah" can make the other think you no longer care. A silence lasting several hours can cause insecurity to swell tenfold. But is the problem in the message itself, or in the way people attach meaning to it? The answer is both. Texting has no fault, but people tend to turn it into a mirror, reflecting their fears and expectations. 2. When expectations exceed reality in many relationships, especially with women, expectations in texting are often much higher than reality. Why? Because a message is not just information, it is a symbol of care. A woman may expect an immediate reply, not because the content is important, but because response time represents her place in your mind. If you reply after 30 minutes, she may think, "I'm not his priority." If you reply immediately, but briefly, she may think, "He's just answering out of obligation." The higher the expectations, the easier the disappointment. So, what is the solution? Perhaps it is not to text constantly, but to establish a shared truth that a message does not reflect the whole of love. Love is proven in real-life moments, not in the speed of replies on a screen. 3. The rule of silence when not texting is also a message. Have you ever thought about this? Silence is also a form of communication. Not every silence means coldness. Sometimes it is simply the space one needs to focus on work or to think quietly. But problems arise when silence is misunderstood. Women often get pulled into a spiral of assumptions. Why hasn't he texted? Did something happen? Or is he losing interest? Silence becomes obsession. This is why couples need to establish a rule of silence. It is not a contract, but simply the understanding that sometimes delays in texting do not equal indifference. When both agree on this, silence will no longer be an empty void of fear, but a space for peace. 4. The truth about long texts and short texts. One of the most common misunderstandings in phone communication is comparing the length of messages. Women tend to think that if a man texts too briefly, it means he does not care. But is this always true? A long text can show effort, but it can also just be an impulsive burst of emotion. On the other hand, a short text might only mean he is busy, or simply used to speaking little. The truth is, the length of a message is not always proportional to the depth of feeling. What matters more is consistency. If a man usually replies briefly, but steadily and honestly, that may be more reliable than someone who sometimes writes long, excited paragraphs and sometimes disappears without a trace. So why are women sensitive to short texts? Because hidden there is a fear that they are not important enough for the other to invest a few more words. This anxiety is what needs to be addressed, not by forcing the partner to write longer, but by building trust beyond words. 5. Response time and the invisible game of power. There is an interesting reality. Response time often becomes a game of power in relationships. Some people reply slowly, not because they are busy, but because they believe holding distance makes them seem more valuable. Others reply immediately to prove their affection. But ask yourself, should love be defined through strategies and calculations? When a woman worries because he replies after 3 hours instead of 3 minutes, the real question is, why is the delay so important? Is it because the main measure have care? In healthy love, response time is not a weapon to assert power. It is simply a reflection of different life rhythms. And if you realize you are caught in the cycle of calculating who texts first, who texts last, how long each takes to respond, maybe the problem is no longer in texting, but in deeper insecurities inside yourself. 6. Emojis, the new language of love. In face-to-face communication, we have eye contact, tone of voice, smiles. In the world of texting, those are replaced by emojis, a red heart, a smiling face, or a silent icon. All have become a new language. Women are often sensitive to how you use or don't use emojis. A heart can reassure her for a whole day. On the other hand, a message with no emoji may be read as coldness, But does everyone use emojis the same way? Clearly not. Some rarely use them. Others overuse them. What matters is understanding your partner's expression style. Instead of imposing your own expectations, if someone rarely uses emojis, then, when he finally sends a heart after a week of silence, it may carry more meaning than someone who showers them everywhere without thought. 7. When texting becomes a tool of control. One of the dark sides of texting is when it turns into a tool of surveillance. Many women admit they feel compelled to constantly check, "Has he seen my message yet?" This reflects a painful truth. Insecurities in love are often magnified through the small screen. Instead of connecting, messages sometimes become the source of suspicion. And when doubt replaces trust, the relationship begins to crack. So, what is the solution? Perhaps it is learning to let go. Texting cannot and should not be the sole proof of love. If you feel you must control every response of your partner, maybe what needs to be addressed is not the messages, but your fear of abandonment. Inside 8. Truth and the difference between direct and indirect. One important point to emphasize: texting was never designed to carry the full weight of love. When you talk in person, you have countless channels of expression: eye contact, smiles, warm silences, or a light touch. But when everything is reduced to a screen, we are left only with words and symbols. This is why many arguments arise. From texting, a harmless sentence spoken face to face can become criticism when read on a screen. Women tend to be sensitive to tone, and in the world of messages, tone is easily misunderstood. So should we limit texting? The answer is not limit, but distinguish. Complicated issues prone to conflict should be kept for direct conversations. Texts should serve daily connection, small reminders, simple care. When we demand too much of it, it betrays our expectations. 9. The rule of fairness. Who texts first? Who texts after? One of the most subtle games in modern love is, why should I text first? If I text first, does that make me too eager? If he cares, why doesn't he text first? Yourself. Why has texting first become a measure of self-worth? In reality, texting first or not does not determine who loves more. But in the psychology of women, and many men too, that action is seen as an invisible test. Who needs whom more? Who cares more? This is where the relationship may fall into the trap of power, when both care too much about the position of initiative. Authenticity fades. Love stops being a natural exchange and becomes a tense strategy. Perhaps the real rule of fairness should be, whoever thinks of the other should text first. Not out of fear, not out of tactics, simply because they want to connect. If you cannot freely send a message without calculation, is that love still healthy? 10. When texting replaces real presence. One paradox of the digital age is, we text more, but meet less. Sometimes couples exchange messages all day, but when they sit face to face, they feel empty, not knowing what to say. So, what is the issue? Texts can maintain connection, but they cannot replace real presence. A woman may feel safe receiving constant messages, but that safety is only temporary. What she needs more is presence, a date, a face-to-face talk, a gentle touch of the hand. If a relationship relies too heavily on texting, it becomes a kind of virtual love where emotions are built through words, but lack real-life bonding. And when reality doesn't match the texting world, disappointment doubles. 11. Finding balance between freedom and commitment. Texting is a double-edged sword. It can make us feel close, yet also make us feel bound. Some women want their partner to text constantly as proof of love. But do you think that control sometimes makes love lose the freedom it needs? A healthy relationship requires both presence and space. The same applies to texting. If you message so constantly that your partner has no room to breathe, the relationship becomes suffocating. But if you disappear too long, safety also disappears. Balance can only be achieved when both understand. Texting is not a chain, nor is it absolute proof of love. It is only a part, one channel of connection among countless ways humans can love one another. 12. When texting becomes the place to expose vulnerability. Texting has a strange trait. It makes people easily reveal the fragile parts they don't want to say directly. A woman may write a very short line, "Where are you?" But hidden behind it is an entire fear. Are you avoiding me? Or am I important to you? This does not mean women are weak, but that they use messages as a mirror to test reactions. How you answer becomes proof of their place in your heart. This is why many men complain. Why does she make a big deal out of a single message? But the issue is not in the message, but in the deep fears it accidentally triggers. The question is, can you use texting to heal instead of hurt? A warm reply, a short explanation can make the other feel safe. On the contrary, indifference or silence easily becomes a wound. 13. Honesty matters more than technique. In many articles, people often list texting tips to keep love. How to text attractively, how not to be looked down on, when to reply. But perhaps more important than all is honesty. If you try to follow strategies, you may keep someone's interest short-term, but you will lose the naturalness needed for long-term love. Women can quickly sense whether a message comes from the heart, or from a skills handbook. So, what is the supreme rule in Textpectations? Perhaps it is only this: text the way you truly feel, but at the same time, learn to respect the psychology of the other. It is the combination of being true to yourself and understanding the other. 14. When to stop texting and meet directly. 1. Principle few dare admit. Sometimes sending another message doesn't solve the problem, but only makes it worse. You may find yourself arguing over the phone, each line becoming sharper, misunderstandings piling up. In that situation, the smartest thing is not to send more, but to stop. A meeting, a call, a direct look. That is where conflict can be resolved. Messages should only play the role of daily connection, not the battlefield for major arguments. Knowing when to stop is a form of maturity. It shows you understand the limits of this tool, and that maturity is often what saves the relationship when things get tense. Texting is neither bad nor good. It is only a tool, but how we use it can decide the quality of love. Behind every message is a psychology, an expectation, a fear. When you understand that, you no longer see texting as a task to complete, but as part of a larger conversation, the conversation of love. Remember, the length of a message is less important than honesty. Response speed does not determine the value of love. Emojis cannot replace real presence, and silence does not always mean indifference. In the modern world, we easily get caught up in keystrokes and forget that love does not live in a screen, but in the way we face each other in real life. If you can text with honesty, patience, and a little psychological understanding, then you already hold the golden rule to keep love lasting. And if you find these reflections help you understand yourself and the one you love better, let these thoughts spread by sharing them, by keeping them in memory. You not only help your own relationship, but may also help someone out there struggling with textpectations in love. And if you wish to continue journeying through philosophical conversations about relationships, let your care be shown in a gentle way. Like a nod, like pressing a small bell to welcome more dialogues to come.